Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to make some chicken tenders with a secret sauce and cut up a watermelon. We kind of had a busy day today, so just got back from soccer and we're trying to do a rush quick lunch before it gets too late. But we're going to start out by making our breading mix or at least our dredge mix for our chicken tenders. So we're going to put in about a cup and a half of all-purpose flour. And then we are going to put in about a tablespoon of Lowry seasoned salt. Ooh, I have to wash that guy. So, about a tablespoon. And then we're going to put in about a teaspoon of oregano. Teaspoon and a half of oregano. And about a tablespoon of onion powder. A tablespoon of paprika. So I ran to the store today real quick because all of my spices were down low, and I find like all of my spices run out at the same time. So a tablespoon of paprika, a teaspoon of ground black pepper. Now, if you like a little bit more heat, you could use red pepper or cayenne pepper or some Cajun seasoning. It's about a teaspoon. And then I'm just going to grab a fork and we're going to stir this all up. And this is going to be our main kind of spice blend for our chicken. We're going to dredge it into it, and then we'll add some seasoned panko breadcrumbs after we do the dredging through. So we're going to mix this up, and then just want to make sure a lot of times, sometimes you have pockets of spices. So good mix because you want every chicken to be nice and flavorful. And then I'm just going to open up my breadcrumbs. We're going to add them afterwards. We're going to dredge them first. Then we'll put them in an egg wash, and then we'll put them back in here. But I just want to have it ready to go. Now we're going to break up 3 eggs. So 1, 2, and 3. We're going to add in about, I want to say maybe 1 to 2 tablespoons of cream. There we go. And we're going to give a good squirt about of a 1/4 of a lemon, but you want some fresh lemon juice. We're going to add this in here. This acidity is going to help keep that chicken nice and juicy, also make for a great kind of batter on our chicken. I'm going to pop each yolk, and we're going to mix it up. And this is going to kind of make our egg wash for it. Now, if you could also use buttermilk instead of cream and lemon, they're essentially kind of doing the exact same thing, but a lot of people don't have buttermilk. So I just like to do a splash of fresh lemon juice in my cream, and then we'll mix it up. And this will make just a delicious kind of egg wash for our chicken. Just gives it a little bit more of a zing to it. Now, here we have our chicken breasts. Here we're going to cut them in half in just a second, but I'm going to get my oil nice and hot and ready to fry our chicken because you want to put your chicken in hot oil. So I'm using olive oil because I just kind of like to keep one oil around the house. But if you have peanut oil is great as well for frying up, or canola oil or whatnot. But I just prefer to just keep one big jug of oil. I'm going to have my oil start heating up. And now what we're going to do is we're going to cut each chicken fillet completely in half to make it nice and skinny. So essentially, you're just going to almost butterfly it, but just go all the way through. This way you don't have to hammer out your chicken, and we're going to have some nice thick chicken tender strips. We're going to cut it again all the way through. And if you see any white pieces on your chicken, that's the fat, and you just want to trim those off because those will just be really chewy. So this right here, we've just got a little bit of fat on it. Just cut that part off because it will not be good in our chicken tenders. You could also use chicken thighs if you wanted to. Chicken thighs is a dark meat, so it will be a much moister, tender, juicy chicken. Okay, so now we've got them all kind of cut through and thinned out. And now we're just going to make some nice, we're going to kind of cut them into strips. So you kind of want strip pieces just like that big, because we want them to be strips, not nuggets. So I kind of do a sideways cut across like that. So you have a nice good strip. Sometimes you got to kind of figure out where your chicken grain is so that you can cut it nicely. There we go. So got there. And you just want to make sure you have them all kind of even as best as possible, so that they're cooking up pretty evenly. There we go. And then see like how this chicken kind of has a rip in it. So we're going to kind of cut those in half. So we'll just have a really long chicken strip for those. But okay, feel like we've got our good chicken tenders here. We're done with that knife. Now what we're going to do is we are going to dredge each one of these, which means we're going to put it in our seasoned flour mixture. And we want to coat it up. And the reason we dredge our chicken first instead of doing egg batter and then our thing is because the egg will just slide right off of your chicken. And so when you dredge it, it helps it cling, and that lets you get a nice crispy skin on your chicken tender, because that's what you want. You want all that flavor to stick. There we go. So I'm going to coat these all up. Beautiful. And your key is to make sure, a lot of people just like to dredge it in plain flour, but this is the seasoning that's going to stick to your chicken the most. So I like to make sure I have a well-seasoned flour to begin with. That way you get all of that good flavor on your chicken. Because sometimes once the second coating on is, sometimes that likes to fall off when you're frying. So I always make sure it's a nice seasoned flour. There we go. We're going to coat this up nice. And then we'll do our egg wash for our chicken tenders. And that we made a kind of a slightly different egg wash today. So we used 3 eggs and about 2 tablespoons of cream. And like we squeezed about 1/4 of a lemon in there. And that's going to just kind of help it give you some natural acidity, which will help keep the chicken nice and tender and juicy as well.
The other question, what's the flour seasoning?
The flour is seasoned with Loki, Bruni. Our dogs are barking at everyone. It's seasoned with onion powder, paprika, pepper, Lowry seasoned salt, oregano, and I think, yep, that's it. So, and just about 1.5 cups of flour. So we've got them all dredged right here. Now, with my clean hand, we're going to add in about 1 cup of panko breadcrumbs. I like to use the seasoned panko breadcrumbs because it gives just a bit more flavor in that breading. And then we're just going to mix them up here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to dip our chicken tenders in the egg, then into our breading here. Now, you can always use regular breadcrumbs, but I find that panko gives you that really nice crunch. So we're going in. You want to make sure it gets all coated, but do you see how the egg wash really sticks to the chicken? That's because you dredged it in that seasoned flour mix. That just helps it all stick on. And then I just like to go over and kind of push the breading into it. There we go. Coat them all up and get this nice kind of seasoned crunchy layer on it. Now, I've heard of people who then like go and do another dredging like of egg wash and then through the crumbs again. I don't feel like it ever works well for me. When I do that, I find all the breading just falls off. So my trick is just to make sure I'm really pressing it in and making sure that piece of chicken gets really, really kind of covered in the egg wash, so it really holds on the nice, like the crumbly, crunchy stage. There we go. Give this a nice pat through. And then we do have our olive oil over here warming up. You can starting to hear it get a little sizzle on it. And the trick is with your olive oil, you want it to get hot enough to where when you put a drip of water in there, it starts to sizzle. If it doesn't sizzle right away, then you want your oil to sit and get a little bit hotter. And then once you start cooking and that oil is hot for about a minute or two, it's been sizzling, then I turn it down so that we're not burning our crust of our chicken. It can kind of do a slow burn. So I'm going to test my oil and see if this is ready. So I just get my fingers with a little drips of water on it and I put it in. And you see how we're getting like this instant boil? That means we're ready. So since my hands are all dirty, we're going to just put our first batch in here. And then we'll finish dredging the next set. Let's get it. And the trick is you don't want to necessarily overcrowd your chicken in here because you want it to fry up nicely. There we go. So we do it in kind of steps and batches, but you don't need enough oil that it's completely submerged. I find that you can just do a little bit and then you flip it as long as it's halfway covered. That gives you a nice crisp on both sides. Okay, we'll finish dredging this. Okay. Just a few more after this. And again, our seasonings were about a tablespoon of paprika, a tablespoon of onion powder, a tablespoon of Lowry seasoning salt, a teaspoon of black pepper, and about a teaspoon of oregano. And all of those just kind of give you that nice kind of savory flavor to it. If you want to add a little spice, just put in some red pepper or some cayenne pepper or even some Cajun seasonings, and that can give you that more spicy chicken tender flavor. But I'm kind of a spice baby here, so.
You have a question? Why olive oil? Is that a specific preference or something you feel like needs to?
It's more of a kind of a preference here, mainly for the fact that I just like to, my pantry space or my cabinet space is, prime real estate here since we're a big family. So I only like to buy one big jug of oil at a time and I use it for everything. So I use olive oil for everything. Just because I don't know, I made the switch from butter to olive oil about like 15 years ago. And I've just been using it since then. And, they always say olive oil is heart healthy. I will say if I'm deep frying a turkey at like Thanksgiving, I fry in peanut oil. But since most of my frying is just pan frying, I just stick with olive oil. But you can really, it's really a personal preference. Some people love peanut oil or canola oil. I just am always buying that bulk big jug from Costco, so that's what I use. There we go. We're down to our last tender here. You can see it's a pretty messy process. That's why I like to just use one hand to do all of the dredging so that I can keep one hand nice and clean. And look, we're using it right down to pretty much a pretty good amount left. It's always nice when you use up just the amount that you need. Beautiful. Okay, so we've got this one. Now I'm going to go take these, put them in the sink, and give my hands a nice, good scrub. Get all of this caked on breading from it. That's where the idea for hush puppies came. It was used like the extra scraps in there they would throw off in their oil and fry them. Here's our chicken is cooking up. I like to just rotate it every now and then. Perfect. Okay, while the first batch of chicken is thing, I have a baking sheet here with paper towels on because I love when I am ready to transfer them out. I want to put them on the paper towels so that they soak up any of that extra grease, which leaves you a nice crispy chicken versus a soggy. If it sits in its own grease, it's soggy. You could also put it on a drying rack if you want to, but I find paper towels are just much easier for the cleanup. Let's give it a first look and see how they're going. I think they might need a little bit longer. We've got a mild kind of gold. I want it just to be a little bit stronger, and then we'll do our first flip. So these need about a minute more. While we're doing that, we're going to make our secret sauce, which is kind of like a cane sauce or like a Chick-fil-A. We're going to do about a half a cup of ketchup.
You have a question, is this lunch or dinner?
This is a late lunch for us. We had a late breakfast at around 10. So, and then we had soccer. And so we're doing a late lunch. And then we'll probably have dinner around 8-ish. Not a super heavy lunch for everyone, just a couple chicken tenders. And we're going to do some watermelon as well. So you want about a half a cup of ketchup and a half a cup of mayo. So equal parts ketchup and mayo, so you can always reduce down. But we've got a bunch here. Let me give our chicken now a flip, and then we'll go to the next part. Perfect. So you want this just nice golden color and crunch to it. And part of this also golden is we put that paprika in it. That gives you that more of a reddish brown, which is good. I feel like paprika is just like a great seasoning for your fried chicken. It's very mellow, but it gives you a really golden, beautiful color. Okay, we're going to use about a teaspoon of garlic salt. So I'm just going to shake it in there. So you could always pop off the lid. Now you could always use a half a teaspoon of garlic powder with a half a teaspoon of garlic or of salt. The garlic salt is kind of the mix. And then we want about a half a teaspoon of black pepper. And about a tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. And again, I just eyeball it because I'm not about to get out the measuring spoons. But once you've been like cooking a while, you kind of understand visually what a teaspoon is, what a tablespoon is. We're going to give this a nice mix until we have it all the way thoroughly mixed together. I'm going to turn down my chicken to a 4 now. Because again, once that oil is nice and hot, you want to keep turning it down so that you don't burn your chicken. Okay. There we go. So here's our little secret sauce. It's kind of like a, like a Chick-fil-A or a Raising Cane's, just that nice, I always like to say like a remoulade, which is a mixture of ketchup and mayo. Okay. Let's get this over. I think we'll cut up our watermelon over there. So let's check our chicken tenders real quick. Good. They still need a few more minutes. You see they've got a light golden color. You want them to have a richer color. Now, they will get a little bit darker after you pull them out, but I am always looking for that nice kind of golden brown because you just don't want to take them out too early. You want a nice crispy one. Okay, we're going to have some fresh watermelon with our chicken. That's what I said. It's kind of like a late but light lunch here. Now, the trick with watermelons, a lot of people don't know how to pick out a good one. If there is a spot on your watermelon, make sure it's yellow. If it's white, it's not going to be sweet. Also look for a rich green color because again, if it's more pale, it's not going to be as sweet. And then you want to look for a tight little, this is where the vine comes off. You want it to be tight, not super big. Super big means it got a lot of water at one time. Same thing, you want tighter lines. That means it grew evenly versus a big rainfall where it grew a lot, and that leads to a not very sweet watermelon. So I'm going to just take my big chef's knife. We're going to cut it right in. And see, it's got that nice, bright red, rich flavor. And you can see nice, thin rind. Now, this is a seedless one. But that's what I'm going through when I'm at the grocery store. I always have to look through all the watermelons, make sure that they all have that nice kind of rich green. If there's a spot where it was sitting on the ground, make sure it's yellow. Okay, look at these. We're going to put the oil side down first. That kind of helps drain up any of that excess grease. There we go. And then we're going to put our next batch in here. And I always like to turn up my oil when I first put things in, because when you put your chicken in here, your chicken is cold. And so when you put it in the oil, it will instantly cool that down. So I always turn it up, and then about halfway through cooking, I'll bring it back down. That's kind of like the trick you have to do, because it is really easy for your oil to get too hot, and then you burn your chicken before you can get a lovely golden crust on it. Now we're just gonna slice. I find I always kind of slice it up and cube it, because it stores a lot better. But this is, you can just hear it. It has such a lovely crunch on. Perfect. It was a good one. The worst is if you, sometimes in the summer, my trick will fail me. You get a mushy one, and that's one that's just, it got too hot, and so the insides turn to mush, and that's just the worst. But this is it has a nice crisp to it, and it's a very sweet watermelon. And that, again, it's, you want to pick the one with that, if you see a spot on it and it's yellow, or the veining underneath has a yellow hue to it, that means it's nice and sweet. There we go. But I never like to buy cut up fruit at the grocery store. It's like highway robbery. You know, they charge so much. Like this watermelon was like $5. But if I were to get the same amount of watermelon in the pre-cut section, it'd be like $10-15. And we go through a lot of fresh fruit in our house, since, you know, we've got 7 mouths every day. And so I'm always like, we can cut it up ourselves. It doesn't take us long. And it's really, you don't need to be a great knife skill. I always just cut it into slices, and then I cut down through here, kind of make the triangles. And then you just take your knife and you just slide it along the inside of there. You don't have to even push that hard. And we'll just give you these lovely little perfect triangles for eating. I once had one of those. It was like the big where you cut it in half, and it's almost like an apple slicer. Never worked. Could always got stuck halfway through the watermelon. I just find a good old knife. It's the same thing like those pineapple. It's like the peel and core never works. But this, pretty simple. Okay, let's see if these are ready for their flip. Okay, pretty good. I'm gonna flip them over. That one needs a little bit more. I'm gonna rotate my pan. That one too. I always say, when you know your stove, one side always cooks a little bit hotter than the rest. There we go. Again, just slice down. Now with cantaloupes, you're able to straighten out, but watermelons, you see how you can't straighten your thing out as much. So that way I always just leave them on and just slide it along. Now you can, they say if you add a bit of salt to your watermelon, it brings out the flavor. I've tried it. I didn't really notice it, but I didn't notice the saltiness either. So, I mean, it can. There we go. I feel like growing up, so I'm the youngest of 10, and a watermelon was like what we had all the time, because one big watermelon was perfect for like 10 people. You know, you cut it up and everyone can have a slice, and there's hardly any left over. So we always had it sewing up, but they didn't have the fancy like seedless watermelons when we were kids. I mean, I think they were just starting to come out, but most of the time it was, you know, you have those, and then you'd always be like, my brothers would always tease me, oh, if you swallow that watermelon seed, a watermelon plant will grow inside you. And for the longest time, I used to always think that. And then as you get older and you realize, like, how stupid could I have been? But when you're young and not gullible, you remember every little thing. You know, theoretically, to be a seedless watermelon, I think it has to have less than 300 seeds for entire watermelon, which to me does not sound very seedless to me. But if you notice, most of the seeds in these watermelons are white. And very, very occasionally you get a black seed, which is what's going to grow you a nice watermelon. There we go. These last two ones I think are ready to flip that we didn't flip last time. Okay. Let those crisp up nicely. You got to see how when we flipped them, these three were much lighter, but as they sit and the oil drains out, they get a much darker color. Once I get this one, we'll plate it up and we'll do it with our delicious sauce. And those of you who joined us late, we made kind of like a Raising Cane sauce here with ketchup, mayo, a teaspoon of garlic salt, a tablespoon of Worcestershire salt, and half a teaspoon of black pepper. And you mix it really up, and it just gives you that delicious kind of remoulade flavor. Here we go. Perfect. You see how that huge watermelon fits perfectly now in my tub. That's what I always say, buy your fruit and then just make sure you cut it up. I always cut mine up with our meals, and then, you know, anything else goes in a tub that we've saved. But you got to just make a point of cutting up, but it will save you so much money long run. You know, I buy all of my melons. I never buy the pre-cut stuff because it's just highway robbery. You're giving them money to cut it up for you, and you could get twice as much, 3 times as much for the same amount. There we go. So we've got all of our watermelon cut up. Let's get these chickens out, and then we're going to serve up a plate. Beautiful. Perfect. So look at these lovely chicken tenders. Those two need a little bit more. Perfect. I'm going to put our last 3 ones in, but then we'll serve up, put up a plate, and show you how we eat it. There we go. But they're going to be that just delicious, thick.
You ever make candied watermelon?
I have never made candied watermelon, but I did make pickled watermelon once, and it was weird. It was good, and I feel like it would be great on a taco, like a pulled pork taco, but I have never done candied watermelon. So let's get our watermelon on here because we've got to have our delicious, and then let's get our chicken tenders, and then of course, we've got to have a big happy serving of our homemade sauce. And right here, we're going to break it apart so you can see the delicious. You see our white, perfectly cooked chicken in there, nice and moist with our delicious breading. And it's perfect for our chicken tenders. So today we made a lovely, breaded chicken with some oregano, paprika, garlic, or Lowry seasoning salt, flour, panko breadcrumbs, and a homemade sauce using mayo, ketchup, Worcestershire, and garlic, salt, and pepper for a delicious lunch. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. I try to do live cooking shows every single day to show you how to make simple foods at home that you can do as well that are delicious. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Again, thanks so much for joining us here today.